The truth is, most traders don't lose to the market, they lose to the parts of themselves they don't even realize are in control. You ever notice how right after a winning streak, something in you seems to need to give it back? Or how you'll get close to finally breaking through and suddenly you overtrade, you self-doubt, or you vanish for a week? You tell yourself it's bad luck, or discipline, or timing, but it's not. That's the shadow trader, the hidden part of you that lives just below awareness, quietly pulling strings while you think you're in control. Every trader has one. The part that craves chaos because calm feels unfamiliar. The part that says, "I've changed," then hits the same button again. The part that would rather destroy progress than face what success might demand of them. It's not evil, it's not weakness. It's your mind's way of protecting you from discomfort, even when that protection costs you everything you've worked for. And in this video, we're not talking about charts, we're talking about the part of you that trades in the dark. The part that fears success as much as it fears failure. The part that lives in the shadows of our habits, our identity, and our nervous system. The one that drives us to chase the same highs, repeat the same mistakes, and find safety in the same chaos. Because whether you realize it or not, your trading results are just the visible surface of an invisible inner pattern. Every trade, every hesitation, every rush of adrenaline, it's all connected to deeper circuitry. It's our biology, our belief system, and our unresolved patterns acting through the market. In this video, we're going to bring those shadows into the light. We'll explore where this hidden part of you comes from, psychologically, biologically, and emotionally. We'll break down why we as traders build patterns that protect our identity instead of our capital. And most importantly, we'll talk about how to integrate that shadow so it stops ruining and running your trading life in the dark. This isn't mindset fluff, this is emotional integration. It's learning to see the parts of yourself you've been fighting and finally understanding that they never were your enemy. They were your protection. So take a breath, get present, because the deeper you understand your shadow, the more control you'll have over your trading and over yourself. Let's begin with Carl Jung, who was a Swiss psychiatrist, psychologist, and psychotherapist who founded analytical psychology. We are going to begin with what he calls the shadow. Jung believed that the human mind isn't just made up of our conscious thoughts and decisions, the stuff we can see, but also a vast, powerful unconscious that holds everything we've repressed, denied, or left unresolved. He describes the psyche as having several parts. The ego, which is our conscious identity, the I we experience every day, the personal unconscious, which stores forgotten memories and experiences unique to us, and the collective unconscious, which holds shared human patterns and archetypes that exist in everyone. And within that unconscious lives what Jung calls the shadow. The shadow represents all the traits, impulses, desires, and instincts that we reject or disown because they don't fit the version of ourselves we want the world to see. It's everything we consider unacceptable, weak, or unworthy. Jung said that when we were children, we began to hide certain parts of ourselves to be loved, accepted, or safe. And those hidden parts become our shadow. Now, what does all this have to do with trading? The market has a way of exposing our shadow and using the negative aspects of it against us faster than anything else. Every decision, every hesitation, every emotional swing pulls hidden parts of us to the surface. When money's on the line, you're not just trading your setup, you're trading your self-image. The same instincts Jung talked about, the ones we repress, deny, or avoid, show up in real time on the chart. That's why traders repeat the same mistakes even after they know better. It's not a lack of knowledge, it's the shadow. The unseen part of you trying to protect an old identity, even if that means sabotaging your new one. And to understand why that happens, we have to look at what's happening under the hood, in your biology, your chemistry, and your nervous system. Let's talk about what actually is happening inside our brain when the shadow trader takes over. Every decision we make in the market is filtered through a survival system that's millions of years old. Our amygdala, the part of our brain designed to detect threats, doesn't know the difference between a market loss and a predator in the wild. It only knows safe or unsafe. And here's where it gets tricky. Even success can feel unsafe if it's challenging your old identity. If you spent years identifying as someone who struggles, someone who's inconsistent, someone who's always trying to figure it out, then actually winning, actually executing well, feels like foreign territory. Your brain flags that as danger. This is where your chemistry starts to steer the ship. Dopamine and cortisol, two of the most powerful chemicals in your trading psychology, form a loop that keeps you cycling through the same patterns. Dopamine is the chemical of pursuit. It makes you chase the next high, the next trade, the next green day, the next moment of excitement. But cortisol is the chemical of stress, and it keeps you anchored to what's familiar. Together, they create what I call the familiar chaos loop. You chase highs, then crash, then feel stress, then recover, and then chase again. You're not addicted to winning, you're addicted to the emotional pattern that feels like home. Your nervous system has what's known as a comfort set point. It's a baseline state your body unconsciously tries to maintain. If someone grew up in stress, inconsistency, or constant motion, their normal might be chaos. So when things finally calm down, when they start trading with discipline or success starts to feel within reach, their body actually panics. Peace feels wrong. It feels too still. So subconsciously, they'll create volatility to bring themselves back to what feels normal. They'll overtrade, they'll take a random loss, they'll find a reason to reset the loop. Meanwhile, your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for logic, planning, and self-control, is trying to step in. It's the adult in the room. It's the one saying, no, don't touch that trade. But the problem is that the prefrontal cortex burns out quickly. Every decision, every chart, every moment of emotional regulation drains its energy. And once it's depleted from stress, fatigue, or too many mental tabs open, your shadow takes the wheel. That's why you can end a long trading day thinking, I knew better, why did I still do that? It wasn't logic that failed you, it was biology. We see this everywhere, not just in trading. Athletes who self-destruct right after fame, artists who spiral after success, traders who blow accounts right after their biggest runs. It's the same pattern, just wearing different clothes. The nervous system doesn't crave success, it craves familiarity. Your shadow isn't trying to ruin you, it's trying to keep you safe. It's your body's way of saying, we've never been here before. Let's go back where it's predictable. The problem is that predictability and progress don't live in the same place. When you start understanding that your biology isn't broken, it's just outdated survival software, that's when you can start rewiring it. You stop blaming yourself for every emotional spike or impulsive trade, and instead start asking, what familiar feeling am I chasing here? Because awareness is the first step out of the loop. Now that we understand how the nervous system feeds the shadow, let's talk about how it actually shows up in your trading behavior, because this is where it hides best. The shadow trader doesn't show up waving a flag saying, hey, I'm self-sabotage. It hides in what looks like logic, hustle, and discipline. It disguises itself as just wanting to get better. But if you look closely, every trader has a pattern that protects something deeper. Let's start with the success punisher. This one's sneaky. Things finally start clicking. You're in rhythm, you're focused, you're following your plan. And then suddenly you size up on a random play or take a trade that you know isn't there. The subconscious belief behind it? I don't deserve this yet. The success punisher is allergic to peace. They're more comfortable in the climb than in the arrival. Winning threatens their self-image, so they subconsciously sabotage it to return to what feels real. You'll see this after green streaks when traders test their luck or push it one more time. That's not chance, it's guilt or disbelief around success. And then there's the perfectionist. This trader never enters because the setup's not perfect. They wait for the cleanest entry, the confirmation candle, the perfect confluence, and then miss it anyway. But underneath that perfectionism isn't discipline, it's fear. The shadow here is the fear of being wrong. Because if they never take the trade, they never have to face the part of themselves that doubts their worth. They can live in the illusion of control. It's safer to almost trade perfectly than to actually risk imperfection. Next is the martyr. This one's common in coaches, analysts, or community leaders. The martyr trades from exhaustion. They're always on, always helping, always giving, and secretly resentful because no one gives back. Their shadow comes from guilt and worthiness wounds. They feel like their value depends on helping or saving others, so they never truly trade for themselves. They'll overwork, overanalyze, burn out, and confuse sacrifice for service. Then we have the rebel. This trader knows the rules, writes the plan, and then ignores it the second emotion kicks in. It's not stupidity, it's rebellion against authority. Somewhere along the line, rules felt like control or punishment. So when structure appears, the shadow says, "No one tells me what to do." And the result? They reject their own system just to prove they are free, even if it costs them money. The irony is that rebellion keeps them trapped in chaos. And finally, the escapist. This one hides behind productivity. They're always researching, planning, tweaking, analyzing, but never truly executing. The shadow here fears emotional exposure. Taking a trade means being vulnerable to outcome, rejection, and failure. So they stay busy to avoid being seen by the market. It feels like progress, but it's protection. When you really start to look at your own patterns, you'll see that none of these behaviors are random. They're not bad habits, they're the language of your shadow. The truth is, your behavior in the market is not random. It's your shadow expressing itself through execution. Every hesitation, every impulse, every emotional overcorrection is your unconscious trying to protect your current identity, even if that means keeping your account small. Once you start to see those patterns for what they really are, protective mechanisms, not personal failures, you can start working with them instead of against them. And that's what we'll be talking about next. Learning how to reveal, relate, and reintegrate your shadow so it stops rooting and running your trades in the dark. Because awareness alone is not transformation. You can't just notice your shadow and hope it disappears. You have to bring it into the light, build a relationship with it, and then learn how to trade with it in the room, not let it drive the wheel. That's where this mind over markets framework comes in. I call it reveal, relate, reintegrate. First, we have reveal. The first step is awareness without judgment. It's about noticing your patterns, not fixing them yet, not labeling them as bad, just seeing them clearly, because you can't change what you're still denying. Ask yourself, where do I self-sabotage right after things start working? When you think about your recent trading cycles, what happens right after progress? Do you take on risks you wouldn't normally take? Do you start second-guessing your system? Do you stop journaling or check out emotionally? Listen for the language your shadow uses. Phrases like, "I always mess up when," or "every time I win, I..." Those sentences are like breadcrumbs leading straight to your unconscious loop. And here's the key. You have to observe these patterns with compassion. The moment you shame yourself for them, you drive them deeper underground. The shadow feeds on repression. So instead of saying, "Why do I keep doing this?" try saying, "Oh, there it is again. My protective mechanism is showing up." Because that's what it is, protection, not failure. The moment you can name a pattern without fighting it, you've already started weakening its control. Next up is relate. This is understanding what the behavior is protecting. Once you can see the pattern, the next step is to relate to it. This means asking the deeper question, what emotion or identity is this protecting me from? Every act of self-sabotage is trying to prevent you from feeling something deeper. Overtrading might be protecting you from stillness, because stillness forces you to sit with yourself. Hesitation might protect you from rejection, because executing and being wrong feels like failure. Breaking rules might protect you from feeling controlled, because deep down authority once felt unsafe. Start by reframing your behavior as an attempt to care for yourself. It sounds strange, but every destructive pattern started as protection. When you relate to it that way, empathy replaces judgment, and empathy is the only thing that dissolves the shadow. So next time you catch yourself repeating a destructive loop, pause and ask, what is this trying to keep me safe from? What part of me doesn't trust that I can handle this emotion yet? You'll be amazed at what surfaces when you stop fighting the behavior and start listening to it. And lastly, we have reintegrate, turning the shadow into strength. Carl Jung didn't see the shadow as evil or negative. In fact, he believed it was essential for growth. Jung wrote that the less aware we are of our shadow, the more it controls us from behind the scenes. He said, everyone carries a shadow, and the less it is embodied in the individual's conscious life, the blacker and denser it is. That means the more we deny those parts of ourselves, the more power they gain over us. They leak out through projection, sudden emotion, or self-sabotage. We see in others what we can't accept in ourselves. Jung's goal wasn't to eliminate the shadow, but to integrate it. He believed that psychological wholeness, what he called individuation, comes from acknowledging and accepting the shadow as part of who we are. Integration brings balance. Instead of pretending to be purely good or purely rational, we become honest, authentic, and whole. He taught that the shadow contains not just darkness, but also untapped creativity, intuition, and strength. The very qualities we need to evolve. The key is to bring those unconscious aspects into awareness, to see them clearly, and to use their energy consciously instead of letting them control us unconsciously. So when Jung talked about facing your shadow, he was really talking about self-honesty at the deepest level. The courage to look at the parts of yourself you've hidden and to realize they're not your enemy, they're your missing power. This is where the reintegrate step comes into play in this Mind Over Market's 3-step system. This is where we transform awareness into power. Reintegrating your shadow means finding the strength hidden inside it and giving that strength a conscious role in your trading identity. Every shadow trait has a buried gift. The rebel may have raw intuition, the perfectionist has discipline, the martyr has empathy and patience, the success punisher has ambition that just needs to feel safe. The goal isn't to erase these parts, it's to align them, to blend discipline with intuition, ambition with patience, and logic with instinct. Use ritual as your integration tool. When you feel the shadow rise, that urge to overtrade, that spike of emotion, just pause, breathe, and label it out loud. My shadow's trying to keep me safe right now. Then, redirect the energy toward a conscious ritual like journaling, breathing, resetting your posture, or walking away from the screen. And in your journaling, use this prompt. What skill or strength is buried inside the shadow? The more often you do this, the faster your brain rewires association. That emotional charge that once pulls you into chaos becomes the exact signal that centers you back into presence. Because integration doesn't mean erasing your shadow, it means trading with it in the room and not letting it drive. Now that we've talked about reintegrating the shadow, let's make it real and give some examples of how. Because theory is great, but if you can't apply it in the middle of a trading day, it's just philosophy. So let's walk through what it looks like for each of the shadow trader types we talked about earlier, starting with the rebel. The rebel is that part of you that hates being told what to do. You know your rules, you write your plan, and then the second emotion hits, you throw it out, not because you're careless, but because structure feels like a cage. But underneath that defiance is raw intuition. The rebel sees patterns before others do. They sense momentum shifts early. The problem is that instinct gets hijacked by ego, the need to prove freedom instead of use wisdom. So here's how you reintegrate it. The next time you feel that impulse to break your plan, pause instead of act. Take a breath and ask, what is this impulse trying to tell me? Maybe your intuition really is spotting something new, or maybe it's fear dressed up as freedom. Use what I call the 2-step intuition rule. Write the idea down, which is your impulse, and step away for 3 minutes. Then come back and check if it still holds logically. You're not killing your intuition, you're training it through discipline. Say it out loud. My freedom thrives through discipline. Next is the perfectionist. The perfectionist wants every box checked before entering a trade. They'll wait for the perfect setup, the perfect candle, the perfect confirmation, and by the time it arrives, the move is gone. But the truth is that perfectionism is not discipline, it's fear of being wrong. The buried strength here is precision, incredible attention to detail and process. The perfectionist just needs permission to be imperfect while executing precisely. So here's the practice. Allow yourself to take trades that meet 80% of your checklist. For those that are not a perfectionist, this could wreck you, so don't do this unless the perfectionist trait applies to you. Before you click, say, perfect doesn't exist, precision does. And after the trade, journal the process, not the results. Ask, did I follow my plan? Did I manage risk? And when you review, keep it short, like 3 sentences, no self-punishment. You're teaching your brain that feedback is safer than perfection. Say it with me. Progression is my new perfection. Then there's the martyr. The martyr is the trader who gives everything away, energy, time, focus, helping everyone else while quietly burning out. They trade from guilt instead of clarity, trying to earn worth through service. But the buried strength here is empathy, patience, and emotional awareness. Those are superpowers when they're used consciously. To reintegrate, build boundaries around your energy. Set one block of time for helping others, and one that belongs only to you. Before each session, ground yourself and say, I trade best when my energy is mine. After red day, step away instead of grinding harder. Go for a walk, breathe, reset. Your empathy doesn't have to drain you, it can feed your patience. Say it out loud. My empathy fuels patience, not depletion. Next is the success punisher. The success punisher shows up after the win streak. Everything's working, you're finally in flow, and then out of nowhere, you size up too fast, take a random trade, or give it all back. It feels like bad luck, but really is disbelief. A subconscious whisper saying, I don't deserve this yet. The gift buried in that pattern is ambition. You want more, you just don't feel safe holding it. So after every win streak, run a quick success grounding ritual. Journal 3 things you did right and 1 emotion that doesn't fit your success. Guilt, anxiety, disbelief, whatever comes up. Then breathe through it. Let your body feel safe in stillness. Visualize yourself holding success calmly instead of rushing to recreate chaos. Say, I can handle this, I am safe in success. And when it's time to scale, do it slowly. Build stability first. You're teaching your nervous system that peace is not the enemy, it's home. Every one of these shadows is energy that wants a job. Once you give it one, it stops sabotaging and starts serving. Integration isn't about becoming someone else, it's about becoming all of yourself. That's the difference between a trader who fights their psychology and a trader who flows with it. Because when your shadow works with you, not against you, that's when execution feels effortless, focus feels natural, and discipline feels like freedom. When you understand your shadow, it stops being your saboteur and becomes your signal. That's the shift. That's where discipline stops feeling like force and starts feeling like flow. Everything we talked about this video comes down to this. Your brain is not broken, it's wired for survival. The shadow trader is not your enemy, it's your early warning system. It's the part of you that felt unsafe a long time ago and built habits to keep you alive, even if those habits no longer serve you. Once you see that, everything changes. You stop viewing self-sabotage as failure and start seeing it as communication. That's the shift. When you integrate the shadow, it doesn't vanish, it transforms. The energy that once drove you to overtrade or hesitate now becomes your intuition. The anxiety that used to cause you to spiral becomes awareness. The guilt that made you sabotage yourself turns into empathy for yourself and for others who are still caught in that loop. Your shadow becomes a signal. It whispers instead of screams. It tells you, hey, something here feels off, before you even realize it consciously. That's the point of emotional intelligence, not to kill emotion, but to partner with it. Think about it. Every time you've blown up or overreacted or frozen in fear, it wasn't random. It was a younger part of you trying to protect your future self. That part doesn't need punishment, it just needs permission. So here's your invitation for today. Stop trying to fix yourself. You're not broken, you're evolving. Start listening to the parts of you that are asking for a role in the evolution. Because the same traits that once held you back are the ones that, once integrated, will make you unstoppable. The rebel becomes creative intuition. The perfectionist becomes precision. The escapist becomes reflection. The success punisher becomes humility. The martyr becomes service without self-erasure. When those parts of you stop fighting for control and start working in harmony, that's when trading stops feeling like emotional war and starts feeling like performance art. So take a second and close your eyes for a moment and picture this. You're standing across from the part of you that used to sabotage you. The version that used to panic or tilt or hit the button out of fear. Picture reaching out your hand to it. You're not fighting anymore, you're aligned. That's integration. You're not deleting your past, you're absorbing it, learning from it, using it as fuel. And from this moment forward, you're trading with a mind that's unified, not divided. Because the goal was never to eliminate emotion, the goal is to evolve through it and to understand it so deeply that it becomes your competitive edge. This is what we mean in Mind Over Markets when we say mental mastery. Not cold attachment, but conscious alignment. Your shadow was never there to destroy you, it was there to develop you. Once you learn to trade with it, beside you instead of behind you, that's when the real consistency begins. So what does this all actually mean for us as traders sitting in front of a screen every day? It means that every time you enter a position, you're not just reacting to price, you're reacting to identity. The chart is neutral, you bring the story. The shadows you haven't faced yet become the invisible algorithms running your decision making. When you hesitate on a clean setup, that's not hesitation, that's protection. When you revenge trade after a loss, that's not greed, that's a nervous system craving familiarity. When you overanalyze, ignore your plan, or freeze before execution, that's not lack of edge, it's your old emotional patterns hijacking your process. Trading exposes who we really are faster than anything else. It mirrors our patience, our fears, our belief about what we deserve. You can't hide from yourself in this game. The market always brings your unconscious to the surface. That's why understanding your shadow isn't some abstract psychology lesson, it's risk management for the mind. The more you integrate your emotional patterns, the clearer your decision-making becomes. You start trusting your plan because you finally trust yourself. Not in predicting the next candle, but in knowing the part of you that wants to react to it. Once you build that relationship with your shadow, the market stops being an emotional battleground and becomes a mirror for growth. Remember, this isn't therapy, this is training for your mind behind the trade. What we do in Mind Over Markets is teach you how to build a system for your psychology just like you'd build a system for your strategy. I'll see you in the program.